are lots of things that, because of the novel coronavirus pandemic, probably won't be reopening anytime soon. Packed indoor concerts, probably not. Dive bars, unlikely. Even huge parties with hundreds of guests may not be the best idea to host indoors. However, there's one thing that absolutely should be reopened in person, and that's schools. Although some spikes are finally hitting the South and the West, much after New York faced their spike, we are in a much better position with regards to the novel coronavirus than we were in March, simply because we now understand the science better. We know that the idea of surface transmission was much overhyped, doesn't really happen. We also know that sunlight is very effective at killing the coronavirus, enabling outdoor dining and regular recreational activities outdoors. Perhaps the most important developments have been learning that mask wearing, even the kind made of multiple layers of cloth and not just surgical and N95 masks, are extremely effective for indoor spaces, especially when coupled with basic social distancing. But there's one fact that really seems buried in the data and something that not enough people are talking about. And that's that children are likely not vectors of the coronavirus, meaning that even if they don't present symptoms, they likely aren't even carrying it and transmitting it from person to person. We already saw that in Denmark, school reopening had no impact on coronavirus rates. And all of this is why the American Academy of Pediatrics came out a few weeks ago and said that schools can reopen in person. Unlike the influenza virus, it doesn't seem that this specific strain of the coronavirus uses children as primary vectors. And now the CDC has followed suit, saying in no uncertain terms that schools need to reopen, as the cost of mental health decline, behavioral health decline, physical health decline when it comes from the neglect and abuse that's commonly sought out by teachers in person, and just basic socialization, that those costs of keeping schools closed through the 2021 school year are significantly greater than the very, very mild risks of the coronavirus being transmitted through children. This entire time, we've been told to follow the science and listen to the experts. On the issue of schools, the experts are clear. Schools are safe, at least for young children. We do know that the CDC has said fewer than 100 children have died as a result of the coronavirus. Colleges are a different story, but K through 12, or at the very least K through 8, is not. Yet despite the very simple proposition that schools should be reopened for kids' sakes and our communities, districts and teachers unions aren't following suit. Los Angeles and New York have already committed to the entirety of the next school year being 100% remote. The largest school district in Florida is suing Governor Ron DeSantis for claiming that all of them should be reopened. And why? Because we've lost the vital truth that teachers serve the taxpayers. We've made a great bargain, and a worthy one, to understand that, yes, you pay taxes for your own children's public education, but just as importantly, you're paying so that every child, the future of our electorate, the future of our economy, gets a baseline education. But the teachers don't want to teach. Instead, they argue that unlike the doctors and the essential food service workers who have been working for months throughout the pandemic, that they are uniquely conditioned to contract the coronavirus. And thus, they should be allowed to do 15 minutes a day on Zoom and receive full pay. You know, I wouldn't want to call this a demand for a paid vacation, but that's what it seems like. When the LA School District's teachers union were issuing their demands for the conditions that would allow them to return to their jobs in person, there was not one stipulation about in-person health or safety. Not one reasonable request about mandatory mask wearing or social distancing, or even temperature checks and better sanitization. Instead, what were their demands? To defund the police and provide more financial services to illegal immigrants. Oh, and on the other hand, charter schools must be closed. Does that sound like an earnest, good faith attempt to make sure that schools are safer for teachers and students when they reopen? Or does it sound like this has all just become a Trojan horse to advance radical left-wing ideas and get paid while you're doing it? And all the while, children are the ones paying the price. We won't know the hard statistics on how badly this crisis has hit children for many years after the fact. But what we do know is that a study reported that 1 in 7 parents say that their children are developing behavioral disorders. We also know that a study in China that was vetted by the American journal JAMA reported that roughly a quarter of all Chinese children were developing some symptoms of depression and of anxiety after just 1 month of a lockdown. Then the parents, realizing that they don't want their children's education to languish with 15 minutes of Zoom a day, with a complete gutting of their math and science curriculum, they're debating having homeschooling pods. A very sensible proposition where either a teacher or a stay-at-home mom or dad teaches their kid along with a few friends. This seems sensible. But now the New York Times is questioning whether or not this is actually racist. As though if you have the resources to afford it, or even just the community that is willing to work together to do it, pulling your kids from our failing public schools is somehow a symptom of white aggression. Here's the truth. We as a society for far too long have forgotten that the teachers work for us, the taxpayers, not the other way around. It's time to prioritize the students who've been made to carry the burden of a disease that won't kill 0.1% of them.
Don't have the First TV app yet? What are you waiting for? Download the First TV app right now on Apple, Google Play, Roku, or Amazon Fire and start watching today.